Hey there, welcome to today's class. We're going to be going over a couple of advanced soldering procedures that you can do in the shop to help make sure that your soldered connections are stronger and last longer, and also to go over how to solder things that are really small to other things. So we're going to be soldering an earring post onto a bar in order to create a bar earring, and I'm going to show you how to make that connection good and strong and do it without any risk of melting down your earring post. So what we have here is my earring post and the stud that I'm going to be attaching it to. Now, I've already got this cleaned up to a satin finish because it's real important to have it clean. So I want to put a small pilot hole here, right in the center of this. So I'm just going to put this punch here, give it a few light taps. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I've got a drill bit here that is roughly the same size, if not a little bit larger than my earring post. And I'm just going to hold this with my fingers and drill down here. Not a lot, probably only about a millimeter or so. Now I could drill all the way through this, which would give me a better connection, and I'm going to talk about that here in just a moment. But I don't want to have any solder or anything on the front of this. So I can get a pretty good connection just by drilling down a millimeter or two here. There we go. All right, now we're going to go ahead and get ready to solder. So one of the biggest challenges with soldering something really small like an earring post onto something a lot more massive like the stud that I'm going to be doing is that I need the two pieces to heat up equally in order to get the solder to flow between the two of them and not just onto the earring post. Because it's so much smaller, it's going to heat up a lot faster than the stud, so I have the risk of the solder just jumping up on the earring post, flowing up the earring post, and not actually adhering to the stud at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to pre-melt the solder right onto that little hole that I drilled, and then while it is still molten, I'm going to lower the earring post down onto it. All right, for this next step, we are going to need some flux, a pair of cross-lock insulated tweezers, a small pair of tweezers to pick up your solder, of course the stud, post, charcoal block, or you can use a unglazed ceramic tile, and I'm using medium solder. And I'm going with medium solder here because it's going to be a bit more pure and easy solder. And because I'm not planning on doing any other soldering to this piece, I don't need to use extra hard solder for this. So all we're going to be doing is just putting a droplet of flux on the stud and a bit of flux at the end of the earring here. Next, I'm zoomed in here. We're going to take our piece of solder and put it right there on top of our hole. And we're going to pick up our post here. And you'll notice that posts have a divot at one end. The divot is, of course, going to be used to secure it with the catch for the nut. So that end is going to go away from my solder. The other end, without the divot, is going to be on there. So I'm just going to set this aside as well. And we're going to go ahead and turn on our fume extractor and light our torch. So here's my flame. It's pretty small. The blue part of the flame here is about 1/8 of an inch long. The total flame is probably no more than about 1 inch here. That's because I don't want to overheat this too much. So what I'm going to be doing is melting the solder. It'll turn into a small droplet, and then it will become liquid. At that point, I'll simply insert this into the hole and then move the flame away. And once I see it solidify, then I can just go ahead and let go of it. Go ahead and turn off our torch here. Now, it's really important to wait just a second when you do put the post in and then you pull the flame away. It's not going to immediately solidify. The molten solder will take a few seconds, and so if you jiggle it around while it's solidifying, you're going to have a really weak connection. So you can see here I've got a pretty good connection on this, so I'm just going to toss it in the pickle. All right, I pulled this out of the pickle, and I haven't cleaned it up yet because I just wanted to show you how the solder flowed up and around the joint. You can see there is a tiny bit of rounding around the post, which is good, but I didn't have a lot of overflow. And I'm going to put this graphic up on the screen here. As you can see in figure A on the left, the post was simply attached directly to the face of the stud, and on the right here we drilled a small hole either partway into or all the way through the stud. And now on this next graphic you can see that the solder here does form a fillet around on the first one in figure A, but on figure B here we have a much better connection. As you can imagine, the leverage on this post, if it were to wiggle left and right, on the second one on the right there, figure B, it's going to be so much stronger and it's much less likely to break away over time. So that's why we drill the pilot hole. The other thing that it does is when that little solder melts into a little droplet, if it's not where you want it to be, you can just nudge it into the hole and it will stay there and it won't flow all over your piece when it does melt. After you're finished soldering, if you find that it's off, like this is just off a little bit, you're going to take just a pair of parallel pliers here, stick the earring in there, and then rather than trying to bend the earring, I'm simply going to adjust the stud here until it's straight all the way around. I can rotate this here and these pliers. If you're way off, like more than 2 or 3 degrees, maybe 5 degrees at most, then it is worth it to just unsolder this by heating it up and pulling the connection out and redoing your work. But a minor adjustment is totally fine. The last step is to finish up our stud here. And I'm just going to put a satin finish on mine. And I like to use these things here. These are called pin vices. They simply use a collet system. And you can just slide these into the jaws here and tighten it down. And now it's good. It's got a good, strong connection here. And by doing that, you're much less likely to damage your earring while polishing. All right, that's all for today. The point I wanted to get across on this lesson was 2 things. One, if you can, make sure you have as much surface area as you can between your 2 solder joints. And this will help to prevent leverage breakage over time, which would be breakage due to possible bending stresses in your piece, which is really important for earrings because of the amount of leverage force at the end of a very small post. The other thing I want to point out is that whatever you can do when you're soldering, if it works, it works, which means if you want to manually move pieces around while you're soldering them, that's okay. You want to pre-solder a joint and then lightly touch the 2 together as soon as the solder melts, that's okay too. If it works for you, then it works. So thanks for watching. Go ahead and check out the next videos here, and I'll be posting more as the time comes.